A video on making a tomato sauce. I've always got it, I always make it, I always keep it in jars and sterilize it, or I've got it in the freezer, or I've got it in the fridge. It's very versatile, and it goes with anything that you want to do. Also, at a push, what you can do is you can add stock to it and some milk and make a really delicious tomato soup. So the ratio is pretty straightforward. I'm going to make a lot. I'm not just making one small batch, I'm going to make quite a big batch. So but these are just the ingredients. The ratios are 1 tin of tomatoes, 400 gram tin of tomatoes, 1 carrot, half a stick of celery, and then it's going to be half a large onion or 1 medium onion, 1 clove of garlic, and 1 sprig, so about that much of thyme from the garden. Now, you don't have to use tin tomatoes. You can use passata. However, if you're going to use passata, these come in 500 grams. What I would recommend for the 1 packet of passata, I would recommend that you double the recipe of the vegetables. So for 500 grams of passata, which I find just quite a little bit stronger in flavour, I'd use 2 carrots, 1 whole celery, 2 medium onions or 1 large onion, 2 cloves of garlic, 2 sprigs of thyme. Just because I find it a little bit more intense. Also, these are relatively cheap tomatoes. The more you can buy more expensive tomatoes, which kind of changes flavour slightly. But not everyone has that budget of being able to afford really expensive tomatoes. So this is a cheap tomato pasta sauce. However, I also was faffing around with tomatoes this week, so I made a load of tomato essence. So I have the pulp, leftover pulp, and the stalks from the tomatoes, which I am going to use in place of some of the tins of tomatoes, because I don't like waste, and I'm not going to put that on the compost when there's so much flavour left in it. So I'm going to use some of that and a mixture of, I haven't got loads of tin tomatoes, I haven't got loads of passata in, so I'm going to mix it all kind of up and keep the ratios kind of the same. I know there's about 3 tins worth of tomatoes in there, so I'm going to class that as 3 tins of tomatoes and put in 3 carrots and so on and so on, right? However, there is a little bit of chopping, but you don't need to chop the onions and carrot. You can just simply whip the ends off, top and bottom them, and then you can grate the carrot. That's easy peasy. Peel the onion and you can grate that as well if you're not very good at chopping. That's fine, or food processor. Garlic doesn't, all the garlic needs to be done is it just needs to be peeled. It's going to cook down for a long time, so you just need to peel it. You don't need to smash it or anything like that. That's fine. It's all going to get pureed in the end, so that's all fine. Same with the thyme. It's a little bit woody at the moment because it's coming to the end of the season, but that's fine. All the leaves will cook off it, and then we'll just be left with the stalks we can just pull out. Now, however, with the celery, you do need to chop it because it has got these long strings that go all the way through it. If you don't cut across the strings like that, you're going to end up with these long bits of celery, which aren't particularly nice to eat. So if we cut it down along that way, like that, we'll cut through those strings, and they will be, once they're cooked down, you won't be able to notice that they're there. So that's pretty straightforward. So I'll cut everything up, chop everything, put it in the pan, and then we'll start the video there. Vegetables are chopped. And they're in the pan. It doesn't matter, apart from the celery, the other vegetables don't need to be chopped particularly uniformly. It's going to cook for a long time. We're talking 3, maybe 4 hours. So everything's going to cook down to a pulp. So no fastidious chopping, apart from the celery that we just kind of need to worry about of that type. Long strands of celery. So you don't need to sweat the vegetables off before you start. You'd have to. People say that you can tell the difference if you sweat the vegetables off beforehand or not. To be honest, you have to have a really sophisticated palate to be able to tell that kind of difference. So, tomatoes in to the pan. These are whole tomatoes, and then we're going to rinse. As you can see, there's still some tomato in the tin, so we're going to rinse the tomato tins out with water, which is fine because it's going to cook down for a long time anyway. So as you can hear, the onions on the bottom are starting to cook. So and also I did read somewhere about the quality of chopped tomatoes over whole tomatoes in tins. That the whole tomatoes are of a better quality, like a grade A tomato. I don't think that means that chopped tomatoes are inferior in taste. I think they're just less perfect. You know, they've had to, the whole tomato hasn't been used, they've just used half the tomato because the other bit was not quite green enough, so they've been graded grade B, but there's no saying that they're actually an inferior quality of flavour. So that's what we'll say on that. So I'm not going to put any salt in because it's going to be cooked for a long time. It's going to reduce down and intensify in flavour. So if we season it now to what we think is going to be a perfect seasoning, because we're going to evaporate off liquid, we're going to make it, and we're going to make it more concentrated in flavour. We will then also concentrate the salt flavour as well to make it too salty. So we're going to cook down first, and then we'll correct the seasoning at the end. I think that's it for the moment. Yeah. So what I'll do is we'll add all the rest of the tomatoes, and then bring it up to the boil, and then a slow simmer. So what I'll do is I'll start the video again when we're doing the slow simmer, so you can kind of see what kind of temperature. Not temperature, you can't see temperature. Well, you can actually, but what kind of how simmering the pan is, because I think that's kind of quite important. I see a lot of things where people talk about, oh, what you need to do is you need to cook this joint of beef for 2 hours and then it's cooked, and I kind of think to myself, that kind of joint of beef, I'd have that in the oven for 3 hours, and I don't think certainly wouldn't be ready after 2. So anyway, so I'll show you what kind of movement in the pan there needs to be when we're talking about a slow simmer. But that's it for now. I will add that I want to show that I am adding all kinds of, I'm not cheating, and I'm adding different types of tomatoes and passata and leftover tomato pulp from making the tomato essence. So I want to show that I'm actually putting it in. I don't want to think, I hate the idea of people cheating. So this tomato pulp in as well, and plus the stalks as well, because there's flavour there. There's a, well, not particular flavour, but there's a fragrance to them, so they improve the taste of the sauce. So they're going to go in as well. And then with the tins of the packets of passata, we're going to rinse them out as well, because we don't want to waste anything. So just a case of doing that. Making a mess of my hands as well. We bought it, I don't want to waste it. So that's that. And there's a few more tins that are going in, but I don't want you to think that I'm just fobbing you off and not doing exactly what I'm going to say I'm going to do. So I've had the lid on, because if you have the lid on, it comes up to temperature quicker. So we're all about saving power and things like that. So the lid can now come off, and the slow cooking can begin. So it's bubbling quite a lot, but because we've taken the lid off, it will now calm down and not bubble quite just as ferociously, and it can sit just like that. Just keep an eye on it every now and again, go down, make sure that nothing's catching on the bottom of the pan, and that's going to happily cook away for a minimum of 2.5 hours, 2.5 3 hours minimum, and we'll kind of see. And what you'll see is that it'll slowly evaporate off the liquid, and it'll intensify and thicken up and darken down in colour, which is what we want. So that's that. You can hear it. So the bubbles there, you see the bubbles there and there, you know, coming through, so that's fine. We'll leave it as it is at the moment. Check back on it in another 15 minutes, see if it's not bubbling too much. Probably wants to go down just a little bit. So just keep adjusting it until you're happy with the amount of bubbling. But it doesn't want to be too much bubbling, because what you're going to do is you're going to evaporate off too much water quite quickly, and then there's a big chance of burning, and you're not going to develop flavour, because what we're wanting is to the natural sugars to kind of come out of the carrots and the onions, and everything kind of mingle together. Also, I will add that a lot of people, tomatoes can be a little bit sour, so people have a tendency to add sugar. Because we put carrots in this, you won't need to put any sugar in, because the natural sweetness of the carrots will counteract that. So, and I'm not a fan of putting extra sugar in things when you don't have to, when you can put something else in. And also, carrots are better for you. So, and the idea of getting as much vegetables and nutrition into you as possible, it's a good idea. You can, especially if you've got kids, you can hide vegetables in things like tomato sauce, you know, which is a good thing. You know, if they don't, a lot of people don't like things. If they see them, they don't like them. If they don't see them, and they generally don't know that they're there. I know multiple occasions where I've kind of fed kids don't like lamb, but you tell them it's beef and they don't know any different. So anyway, that's a little bit of a lie, but anyway, to tell people. But there we go. But that's it for now. It will slowly cook away for at least 2.5–3 hours. Just keep an eye on it. Make sure it's not boiling too much, simmering too much, or not enough. Just keep an eye on it. That's all you have to do. Right. So it's had 3 hours, and I'm a little bit concerned that it's reducing a little bit too fast, and that the vegetables just aren't as cooked down as much as I would have liked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the temperature down, and I'm going to put the lid on. That will stop any more evaporation of the liquid, because I think once I pure that down, I think that'll be of a good consistency. So the lid will stop that from happening, and it'll also act more like a pressure cooker, and kind of start to cook the veg down and get the kind of natural sugars out of it. So I'll give it another hour, maybe 2, with the lid on a lower heat, and that will sort that problem out. So it is now ready. It has reduced down. Still, and it's intensified in flavour because a lot of the liquid is evaporated off. All the vegetables are nice and soft, so it's going to puree down. It won't be a problem. You can see there's a lump of garlic there, and I can press it up to the side of the pan, and it presses up, and it disintegrates kind of quite easily. So that's all the vegetables are nicely cooked. I just need to pick out the tomato stalks, which have added their flavour and are no longer in use. I'm certainly not going to puree them into the sauce. And then all the thyme stalks have lost all their leaves. The leaves are fine in there, but that's woody and that's not very nice to eat, so they're all going to get picked out as well. And then I'm just going to puree it down, put it in some nice sterilised jars, and then I'm going to double, and then I'm going to put those jars into some water, and I'm going to just thoroughly just boil them, just simmer them for another hour in some sealed jars in some water, and then that'll completely kill any cat and bacteria and make sure it lasts for a very long time in the cupboard. I think that's it. Yeah, so it's just a simple tomato sauce, and once I've pured it down, then that can be used straight away with pasta. I'm going to season it a little bit because I think adding salt to things that you're going to put in jars helps with the preserving of them. But I'm not going to season too much because you don't. It depends what you want to use it for, but it's best off not to have too much seasoning in things because you can, as always, you can add, but it's very difficult to take away. This is the same sauce that I make when I'm making a ragu. So if I had a joint of beef and I wanted to make a ragu out of it, what I would do is I'd have the same ratio of tomatoes, carrot, onion, and celery, and garlic and herbs. And that's how I would make a ragu, and slowly cook that down on top of the stove in a pan like this, or I'd do it in the oven and then make a ragu. But once you've made this sauce, that you can then recook the sauce with a joint of beef in it, or lamb or pork, and make a ragu that way. But it's just a very versatile sauce to have, and as I said before, you can add water it down with a bit of stock and a bit of milk, and it makes a really, really, really nice tomato soup. So there we go. It's just a useful thing to have, and I've always got it in the house. And if I'm stuck to it's one of those things that I give away as presents as well. So if I've got friends and I'm not entirely, I only make them like food parcels for birthdays or Christmas. I normally stick in a jar of that as well, and it's always gone down really well when I've given it away as a gift. So that's it. That's how I make a tomato sauce. So just to finish off, I have jarred up the tomato sauce, and I have sterilised it in cold water, and then brought it up to boiling, and then simmered it for a good hour and a half. And then the jars are completely sealed and completely sterile. What I do is I put them in different sized jars, so I don't have to open one jar if I need just a little bit of sauce. So there's enough in there if I want to make a pizza and need some quick tomato sauce for the pizza. There's enough in there for that, rather than having to open that and then have half the jar of not knowing what to do with it. And then if I want to do bigger dishes, I've also put it in some bigger jars, and then I don't have to end up opening lots of different jars. It stores really well in a cool, dry cupboard. or if you've got a garage or a shed that's cool and dry, they store really well. But I'm going to keep these in the fridge because there's not much in the fridges at the moment, and so every time I go in, the fridges lose all that cold air. So if there's more things in the fridge, it's more efficient. So because there's less air in the fridge, because it's full of things that are just going to keep their temperature a lot easier. So it kind of works out a little bit easier that way to put things in the fridge at the moment. But otherwise, I'd have them in the cupboard. I think that's it. Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that's it. Yeah. If on the subject of seasoning, I did put a little bit more seasoning in them. If you've just got to remember when you using things that you've seasoned, that you just need to remember that you've seasoned them, and then taste before you add more seasoning. And if you're adding things that have already been seasoned to them, you just got to kind of like just remember and taste rather than before you start throwing salt in things. I think that's it. But that's just a relatively easy tomato sauce to make, and quite versatile, because from that it can go straight onto pasta, it can go straight onto a pizza, and you can add things like stock to it and a bit of cream or milk, and it turns into a soup, and that's it. So it's just easy and just a good thing to have around.